The soldier stood in the dimly lit training room, his boots scuffing against the metallic floor as he adjusted the weight of the weapon in his hands. His name was Eric, a man hardened by years of conflict but still carrying traces of warmth beneath his stern exterior. Across from him stood Lyria, an alien princess whose shimmering violet skin and luminous eyes made her look like she belonged to another world, because she did. She tilted her head slightly, her long silver hair cascading over one shoulder as she studied the gun with both curiosity and apprehension. Eric cleared his throat, breaking the silence that had settled between them. "You've never held one before, have you?" he asked, his voice low but not unkind. Lyria shook her head, her fingers brushing nervously at the edge of her flowing gown. "Weapons are forbidden among my people," she admitted softly, her melodic voice tinged with uncertainty. "We resolve disputes through dialogue and understanding." "Well, where I come from, sometimes words aren't enough," Eric replied, offering her a small smile. He stepped closer, extending the sleek pistol toward her. "Here, take it. Just hold it for now." Hesitant, Lyria reached out, her slender fingers wrapping around the cool metal. The moment she touched it, she flinched, as if expecting it to bite back. Eric chuckled softly, placing his hand gently over hers to steady her grip. Her cheeks flushed a deeper shade of lavender, and she glanced up at him, startled by the contact. "This isn't going to hurt you," Eric assured her, his tone gentle yet firm. "But if someone tries to hurt you, this can stop them." Lyria swallowed hard, her gaze darting between the gun and Eric's face. "Why are you teaching me this? You don't even know me." "I know enough," Eric said simply. "Your planet is under threat, and your people refuse to fight. That leaves you vulnerable. If something happens, and trust me, it will, you need to be able to protect yourself." She frowned, clearly conflicted. "Violence feels wrong to me. It goes against everything I believe in." "Beliefs don't mean much when someone's aiming a weapon at your head," Eric countered bluntly. When he saw the flicker of fear in her eyes, he softened his tone. "Look, I'm not asking you to become a soldier overnight. But knowing how to defend yourself doesn't make you violent, it makes you smart." Lyria hesitated, then nodded slowly. "Very well. Teach me." The first lesson was awkward, to say the least. Lyria struggled to aim properly, her arms trembling as she tried to steady the gun. Eric stood behind her, guiding her movements with careful precision. His hands hovered near hers, correcting her stance without actually touching her too much after their initial interaction. Still, every time their fingers brushed accidentally, Lyria felt a strange warmth spread through her chest. "Relax your shoulders," Eric instructed, his breath tickling her ear. "If you're tense, your aim will be off." "I am relaxed," Lyria protested, though her rigid posture suggested otherwise. Eric smirked. "Sure you are. Now, pull the trigger softly. Don't yank on it like you're trying to start a stubborn engine." She rolled her eyes but followed his advice. The shot rang out, echoing loudly in the confined space. To her surprise and relief, the bullet hit close to the target, though not quite dead center. "That wasn't so bad," Eric said encouragingly. "See? You're a natural." Lyria turned to him, her expression brightening with pride. "Do you really think so?" He shrugged nonchalantly, though there was a glimmer of admiration in his eyes. "For someone who's never held a gun before, yeah. Not bad at all." Her smile widened, and for a brief moment, they simply looked at each other. Then reality crashed back down, and Lyria quickly averted her gaze, focusing instead on reloading the weapon. As days turned into weeks, their bond grew stronger. What started as reluctant cooperation evolved into genuine camaraderie. They spent hours together, not just practicing combat skills but also sharing stories about their vastly different lives. Eric spoke of Earth, its wars, its beauty, and its flaws. Lyria described her homeworld, a serene paradise where harmony reigned supreme, or so she thought. One evening, as they sat side by side on a rocky ledge overlooking the alien landscape, Lyria sighed wistfully. "I used to think our way of life was perfect," she confessed. "No violence, no hatred, just peace. But now..." "Now what?" Eric prompted, leaning back on his elbows. Now I see the cracks beneath the surface, she admitted. There's unrest among my people. Some want to embrace change, while others cling desperately to tradition. And then there's the looming threat of invasion. Eric nodded grimly. Change is scary. People tend to resist it until they have no choice. But what if we lose ourselves in the process? Lyria asked, her voice barely above a whisper. What if embracing violence turns us into something we're not? Eric considered her question for a moment. It's not about becoming something you're not, he said finally. It's about adapting to survive. Survival doesn't mean losing your identity. It means protecting what matters most. Lyria mulled over his words, her gaze fixed on the horizon. And what matters most to you, Eric? He hesitated, caught off guard by the question. Honestly? Right now, it's making sure you stay alive, he admitted gruffly. If anything happened to you, he trailed off, shaking his head. Let's just say I've seen too many good people die because they weren't prepared. Lyria's heart skipped a beat at his words. For all his gruffness, Eric had a protective streak that ran deep. It was endearing and terrifying. She didn't want to admit it, but she was starting to care for him more than she should. Their growing connection wasn't lost on those around them. Rumors began to circulate among the human soldiers stationed on Lyria's planet. Some teased Eric mercilessly, calling him Prince Charming and speculating about his intentions. Others were more skeptical, warning him not to get too attached to an alien princess who might have ulterior motives. Meanwhile, Lyria faced scrutiny from her own people. Many disapproved of her association with a human, viewing it as a betrayal of their values. Even her closest advisors urged her to distance herself from Eric, fearing that his influence would corrupt her. Despite the mounting pressure, neither of them backed down. Their determination only fueled their resolve to stand by each other, no matter the cost. One day, during a particularly intense training session, disaster struck. A group of rogue mercenaries, hired by a rival faction within Lyria's government, launched a surprise attack on the compound where Eric and Lyria were stationed. Chaos erupted as alarms blared and gunfire filled the air. Eric grabbed Lyria's arm, pulling her behind cover. "Stay close to me," he shouted over the din. Lyria nodded, clutching the gun Eric had taught her to use. For once, she didn't hesitate. As enemies closed in, she fired with surprising accuracy, taking down several attackers. Eric fought alongside her, his movements fluid and precise as he eliminated threats with ruthless efficiency. When the dust finally settled, they found themselves standing amidst the wreckage, breathing heavily but alive. Lyria looked at Eric, her eyes wide with disbelief. "We did it," she whispered. Eric grinned, wiping sweat from his brow. "Told you you'd make a great soldier." Lyria laughed shakily, lowering her weapon. "Don't push your luck." In the aftermath of the attack, tensions reached a boiling point. Lyria's position as princess became increasingly precarious, with factions within her government vying for control. Meanwhile, Eric's superiors demanded answers, questioning whether his loyalty lay with Earth or with Lyria. Caught in the crossfire, the two of them realized they couldn't keep living in limbo. Something had to give, but neither was willing to let go of the other. Late one night, as they sat together in the quiet sanctuary of Lyria's chambers, she turned to him with a mixture of desperation and hope. "What do we do now, Eric? How do we move forward when everyone wants to tear us apart?" Eric took her hand in his touch firm yet gentle. "We fight," he said simply. "For each other. For what we believe in. Together." Lyria's heart swelled with emotion, and she leaned into him, resting her head on his shoulder. In that moment, surrounded by uncertainty and danger, they found solace in each other's presence. Whatever challenges lay ahead, they knew they wouldn't face them alone. As the days turned into weeks, Eric and Lyria found themselves inseparable. Their bond deepened not just through shared battles but also in quieter, more intimate moments. Late at night, when the chaos of war seemed distant, they would sit under the twin moons of Lyria's planet, talking about everything and nothing. She told him stories of her childhood, growing up in opulent palaces surrounded by beauty and tradition. He shared tales of Earth, its bustling cities, its vast oceans, and the simple joys of life he often took for granted before being thrust into endless conflict. One evening, as they strolled along a crystalline riverbank that shimmered with bioluminescent lights, Lyria stopped abruptly and turned to face Eric. Her luminous eyes searched his face, her expression a mix of curiosity and vulnerability. "Do you ever wonder what it would be like if things were different?" she asked softly. Eric tilted his head, his brow furrowing slightly. "Different how?" "If we weren't from two different worlds," she clarified. "If there was no war, no politics, just us." He hesitated, caught off guard by the sincerity in her voice. For a moment, he let himself imagine it, a peaceful existence where they could simply be. No threats looming over their heads, no one questioning their connection or trying to tear them apart. Just Eric and Lyria, living without fear or judgment. "It'd be nice," he admitted finally, his tone gruff but warm. "But even if all that stuff didn't exist, I don't think I'd change anything about how we got here. You're worth fighting for, Lyria. Always." Her breath hitched at his words, and she looked away, embarrassed by the flush creeping across her cheeks. "You shouldn't say such things," she murmured, though her smile betrayed her delight. "Why not?" Eric teased, nudging her gently with his elbow. "Afraid your advisors will scold you again?" Lyria laughed, the sound light and melodic. "They already disapprove of me spending time with you. If they heard you speaking so boldly—" "They can disapprove all they want," Eric interrupted firmly. "I'm not going anywhere, and neither are you. Let them talk." Her laughter faded, replaced by a tender look that made Eric's chest tighten. "Thank you," she said quietly. "For believing in me. For staying." "There's nowhere else I'd rather be," he replied, his voice rough with emotion. Their relationship continued to evolve, becoming something neither of them had anticipated. It wasn't just physical attraction or mutual respect, it was deeper than that. They began to rely on each other in ways that went beyond survival. When Lyria doubted herself, Eric reminded her of her strength. And when Eric felt the weight of his responsibilities crushing him, Lyria offered a calm presence that grounded him. During one particularly grueling mission, Eric sustained an injury while protecting Lyria from enemy fire. As she tended to his wounds back at the base, her hands trembled with worry. "This is my fault," she whispered, tears glistening in her eyes. "If I hadn't been so slow to react." "Stop!" Eric cut in sharply, wincing as he shifted position. "Don't you dare blame yourself. This isn't your fault. It's mine for getting too close to the line of fire." "But why did you do it?" she demanded, her voice breaking. "Why risk your life for me?" Eric reached up, cupping her cheek with his uninjured hand. "Because losing you isn't an option," he said simply. "Not now. Not ever." Lyria stared at him, her heart pounding in her chest. In that moment, she realized just how much he meant to her, and how much she meant to him. The wall she had built around her heart crumbled completely, leaving her exposed and vulnerable, but also free. "I love you," she blurted out, her cheeks burning with embarrassment. "I know it's foolish, given everything happening around us, but I can't help it. I've never felt this way about anyone." Eric froze, his expression unreadable for a brief second. Then, slowly, a smile spread across his face. "It's not foolish," he said, his voice soft but steady. "And for the record, I love you too." Their confession marked a turning point in their relationship. From then on, they were no longer just allies or companions. They were partners in every sense of the word. Their connection became a source of strength, fueling their determination to protect each other and their respective worlds. However, their newfound happiness did not come without consequences. News of their romance spread quickly, causing outrage among both human and alien factions. Some saw their union as a betrayal, while others viewed it as a dangerous distraction. Political tensions escalated, and whispers of rebellion grew louder. Despite the mounting pressure, Eric and Lyria refused to hide their feelings. Instead, they stood together publicly, defying those who sought to drive them apart. During a tense diplomatic meeting between human leaders and Lyria's council, Eric stepped forward unexpectedly, addressing the room with unwavering resolve. "Lyria and I may come from different worlds," he declared, his voice ringing clear and strong. "But our bond is real, and it's unbreakable. We're not asking for anyone's approval, we're simply stating a fact. If you have a problem with that, take it up with me." The room fell silent, stunned by his boldness. Lyria stood beside him, her chin lifted defiantly, her violet eyes blazing with pride. Together, they presented a united front, daring anyone to challenge them. Though some remained hostile, others couldn't help but admire their courage. Slowly but surely, cracks began to form in the opposition. A few members of Lyria's council softened their stance, recognizing the sincerity of their princess's feelings. Even among the human soldiers, grudging respect for Eric's loyalty started to emerge. Amidst the political turmoil, Eric and Lyria carved out moments of joy whenever they could. They trained together, laughed together, and dreamed together of a future where peace might prevail. On one occasion, during a rare lull in the fighting, Eric surprised Lyria with a makeshift picnic beneath the stars. He had scavenged food supplies from the human camp, including chocolate bars he jokingly referred to as Earth's greatest invention. Lyria giggled as she unwrapped the treat, taking a tentative bite. Her eyes widened in delight. "This is incredible," she exclaimed. "How have I lived without this?" Eric chuckled, leaning back on the grassy ground. "Careful, or you'll spoil your appetite for palace feasts." She rolled her eyes playfully, lying down beside him. "Palace feasts are lovely, but they lack something essential." "Oh, what's that?" "You," she said simply, resting her head on his shoulder. For a while, they lay there in comfortable silence, watching the constellations twinkle above them. It was a fleeting moment of peace in an otherwise chaotic world, but it was enough. Enough to remind them why they fought so hard, why they endured the challenges thrown their way. Yet even as their bond grew stronger, shadows loomed on the horizon. A powerful faction within Lyria's government, led by a ruthless general named Valor, began plotting to overthrow her rule. They saw her alliance with Eric as a weakness, a chink in her armor that could be exploited. Meanwhile, Earth's military command grew increasingly impatient, demanding results from their mission to secure alliances against the impending invasion. Caught between these forces, Eric and Lyria knew they couldn't keep avoiding the inevitable. The choice before them was stark: surrender to the pressures tearing them apart, or fight harder than ever to stay together. And fight they would. Because now, more than ever, they understood that their bond wasn't just a source of personal happiness, it was a symbol of hope. Hope that two vastly different worlds could find common ground. Hope that love could transcend boundaries. But as events spiraled toward a climax, they would soon discover just how far their enemies were willing to go to destroy what they had built. The calm before the storm shattered one fateful evening when Eric and Lyria received an urgent message from a trusted ally within Lyria's government. The transmission was garbled, filled with static, but the words that came through were chilling. "Valor knows about the weapon cache. He's planning to seize it tonight." Eric immediately sprang into action, grabbing his gear while Lyria listened intently for any further details. "What weapon cache?" she asked sharply, her voice laced with alarm. "It's a secret stash of advanced human weaponry we've been hiding," Eric explained as he strapped on his holster. "If Valor gets his hands on it, he'll have enough firepower to overthrow your council, and possibly start a war between our people." Lyria's eyes widened in horror. "Why didn't you tell me about this sooner?" "There wasn't time," Eric replied grimly. "And I didn't want to put you in danger. But now," he trailed off, looking at her with a mixture of guilt and determination. "Now we don't have a choice. We need to stop him." Without hesitation, Lyria grabbed her own weapon, a sleek pistol Eric had trained her to use, and nodded resolutely. "Then let's go." The journey to the hidden cache was fraught with tension. They moved swiftly through the dense alien forest, their footsteps muffled by the soft moss covering the ground. Moonlight filtered through the canopy above, casting eerie shadows that danced around them. Every sound, the rustle of leaves, the distant call of nocturnal creatures, set their nerves on edge. As they approached the location, they spotted movement ahead. A group of heavily armed soldiers, clad in Valor's insignia, was already there, rummaging through the crates of weapons. Eric signaled for Lyria to stay back, but she shook her head defiantly. "I'm not letting you face them alone," she whispered fiercely. Eric hesitated, then relented with a curt nod. Together, they devised a plan. Using her knowledge of the terrain, Lyria would circle around to flank the enemy while Eric created a diversion. It was risky, but they had no other option. When the moment came, Eric stepped out into the open, firing a warning shot into the air. "Drop your weapons," he shouted, his voice echoing through the clearing. Startled, the soldiers turned toward him, giving Lyria the opening she needed to strike from behind. Chaos erupted as gunfire filled the night. Lyria moved with surprising agility, taking down several enemies with precision shots. Eric fought valiantly, holding his ground despite being outnumbered. For a brief moment, it seemed like they might succeed. But then, just as the tide began to turn, a figure emerged from the shadows. A tall, imposing man with cold, calculating eyes. General Vaylor himself. "So," Vaylor sneered, his gaze flicking between Eric and Lyria. "The traitorous princess and her human lapdog. How predictable." "Stand down, Vaylor," Lyria commanded, her voice steady despite the adrenaline coursing through her veins. "This is your last chance to walk away." Vaylor laughed darkly, raising his own weapon. "You think you can stop me? You're a disgrace to your people, siding with these barbarians. Once I eliminate you both, I'll restore order to this planet, and crush anyone who dares oppose me." Before either of them could react, Vaylor fired. The shot grazed Eric's shoulder, sending him stumbling backward. Lyria cried out, rushing to his side, but Vaylor was already advancing, his weapon trained on them. "You should have chosen loyalty over love," Vaylor spat, his finger tightening on the trigger. Just as all hope seemed lost, a deafening roar split the air. From the trees above, a massive creature descended, a leviathan native to Lyria's planet, its scales glinting like molten silver under the moonlight. With a single swipe of its clawed appendage, it sent Vaylor flying, his weapon skittering out of reach. Lyria gasped, staring up at the beast in awe. "It's protecting us?" Eric groaned, clutching his injured shoulder. "Looks like even nature's on our side." Seizing the opportunity, Lyria retrieved Vaylor's weapon and pointed it at him as he struggled to rise. "Surrender," she ordered, her tone leaving no room for argument. Defeated and humiliated, Vaylor complied, his expression twisted with rage. His remaining soldiers quickly followed suit, dropping their weapons and retreating into the forest. Though they had won the battle, the victory felt hollow. As they tended to Eric's wound back at their makeshift camp, Lyria couldn't shake the feeling that something was still terribly wrong. "Eric," she said quietly, her brow furrowed with concern. "How did Vaylor know about the weapon cache? Only a handful of people knew its location." Eric froze, his eyes narrowing as realization dawned. "Someone betrayed us," he muttered, his voice heavy with anger. "Someone close." Before they could speculate further, another transmission crackled to life. This time, it was clear and unmistakable, a recording of a familiar voice. "To my dear daughter, Lyria," the voice began, dripping with malice. "By now, you must realize that trust is a luxury neither of us can afford. Your attachment to the human has blinded you to the truth. I orchestrated this entire conflict, not to destroy you, but to test you. And unfortunately, you failed." Lyria's blood ran cold. The voice belonged to none other than her own mother, Queen Silvara. "No," she whispered, shaking her head in disbelief. "She wouldn't." "She would," Eric said grimly, his jaw clenched. "Your mother wanted to see if you'd choose duty over emotion. When you sided with me, she decided to take matters into her own hands." Tears welled up in Lyria's eyes as betrayal cut deeper than any blade ever could. "All this time, she played us both." The revelation of Queen Silvara's betrayal sent shockwaves through Lyria and Eric, but it also ignited a fire within them. They refused to let manipulation and deceit dictate their future. Instead, they resolved to confront the Queen head-on, not with violence, but with truth and unity. With Vaylor neutralized and his forces scattered, Eric and Lyria rallied support from unlikely allies, disillusioned members of Lyria's council who had grown weary of the queen's oppressive rule, as well as sympathetic human soldiers who believed in their cause. Together, they formed a coalition determined to expose Silvara's machinations and restore balance to the planet. The confrontation took place in the Grand Hall of the Royal Palace, where Queen Silvara sat upon her crystalline throne, exuding an air of icy composure. When Lyria and Eric entered, flanked by their supporters, the tension was palpable. "Mother," Lyria began, her voice steady despite the storm of emotions raging inside her. "You've manipulated us all for far too long. Your fear of change has blinded you to the suffering of our people." Silvara rose slowly, her piercing gaze locking onto her daughter. "Change is dangerous, Lyria. You think love will save you? That your bond with this outsider will bring peace? It will only lead to ruin." "It already has," Lyria countered, stepping forward. "Your schemes have divided us, turned family against family, ally against ally. But we're done playing your games. We choose to forge a new path, one built on trust, cooperation, and hope." Eric stepped beside Lyria, his presence unwavering. "We're not enemies, Your Majesty. We don't want war. What we want is understanding. Let us work together to create something better, for both our worlds." For a moment, Silvara seemed unmoved, her expression unreadable. Then, unexpectedly, she sank back into her throne, her shoulders slumping ever so slightly. "Perhaps I've been wrong," she admitted softly, her voice tinged with regret. "Perhaps my fear has clouded my judgment." Lyria approached cautiously, kneeling before her mother. "It's not too late to make things right, Mother. Please, join us." Tears glistened in Silvara's eyes as she reached out, placing a trembling hand on Lyria's cheek. "Forgive me, my child. I only ever wanted to protect you. And now you can," Lyria replied gently, "by standing with us." With Silvara's reluctant blessing, the coalition set about rebuilding. The weapon cache was dismantled, its contents redistributed to ensure mutual defense rather than domination. Diplomatic ties between humans and Lyria's people were strengthened, fostering collaboration instead of conflict. Slowly but surely, the scars of betrayal began to heal. Amidst the newfound harmony, Eric and Lyria found time to focus on their own lives. Their love had been tested in ways neither could have imagined, but it had emerged stronger than ever. One evening, under the twin moons that had witnessed so much of their journey, Eric knelt before Lyria, holding out a simple ring crafted from shimmering alien metal. "Lyria," he said, his voice thick with emotion, "you've taught me what it means to truly live, to fight for something greater than myself. Will you spend the rest of your life fighting alongside me?" Tears streamed down Lyria's face as she nodded, pulling him into a fierce embrace. "Always." Their wedding was a celebration unlike any other, blending human traditions with alien customs. Friends, allies, and even former adversaries came together to witness the union of two souls who had defied the odds to build a brighter future. As they exchanged vows beneath a canopy of glowing bioluminescent flowers, the crowd erupted in cheers, sealing their bond with joy and hope. Years passed, and their love bore fruit in more ways than one. Lyria gave birth to twins, a boy named Kai, who inherited his father's adventurous spirit, and a girl named Lyra, whose radiant smile mirrored her mother's grace. Watching their children grow up in a world free from fear filled Eric and Lyria with profound gratitude. One day, as they stood together on the same rocky ledge where they had shared countless conversations, Eric wrapped an arm around Lyria's waist. "Do you remember when we first met?" he asked, chuckling at the memory. "You were so hesitant to hold a gun." Lyria laughed, leaning into him. "And now look at me, I'm practically a marksman." "You've always been more than capable," Eric said warmly. "I just helped you realize it." They fell silent, gazing out at the horizon where Earth's stars twinkled alongside those of Lyria's planet. Their journey had been anything but easy, but every challenge had brought them closer. Together, they had faced betrayal, loss, and uncertainty, and emerged victorious. As the sun set in a blaze of colors, casting a golden glow over the land, Lyria rested her head on Eric's shoulder. "We did it," she murmured. We built the life we dreamed of. And we'll keep building it, Eric replied, kissing the top of her head. Together. In that moment, surrounded by the beauty of their shared world and the promise of tomorrow, they knew they had everything they needed. Love, family, and peace. Finally, theirs to cherish forever. Beneath the twin moons, Eric and Lyria stood hand in hand, their hearts full. You've given me a life I never thought possible, Eric whispered, his voice thick with emotion. And you've shown me the strength of love, Lyria replied, her violet eyes shimmering with tears. Around them, their children laughed, playing in the glow of the bioluminescent fields they called home. The stars above seemed to shine brighter, as if celebrating their unity. Together, they had faced wars, betrayals, and doubts, but emerged unbreakable. Forever, Eric, Lyria said softly, leaning into him. Forever, my love, he echoed, holding her close. And as the universe stretched endlessly before them, they knew their bond would endure it all. In each other's arms, they found their happily ever after.